Hello everybody, it's Mrs. Varner. We're going to get ready to start Chapter 1 in Geometry, and we're going to start it off by looking at points, lines, and planes. So in your notes, this is section 1.1. This is a section that is very heavy in vocab, so just get prepared to write down quite a bit of vocab words. Make sure you're drawing the pictures when you can, all that fun stuff. We'll get through it. It's going to be a little bit longer of a video than normal, but just bear with me. We'll get through it. It is a very important section because you're going to pretty much use these concepts all year. So if you have any questions at any point about any vocab words or problems that I go through, make sure you write them down and ask me in class or email me and I will gladly answer those. All right, so let's get started. So we're just going to start with the first vocab word today, and that is going to be a point. Now some of this may seem familiar to you from previous classes. Hopefully a little bit of familiarity. If not, no big deal. But a point is just a location that has no shape or size. So a point, think of it as a location on a map or something along those lines. A point, we use a dot to represent it, okay, just like it sounds, that's a point, okay, and even though we draw it and it has some size to it, technically it's infinitely small, so you can't technically see points even though we draw them so that we can see them, okay, so this is just a representation of a point, and when we are labeling points, we always name them with capital letters. So if this is my point right here, right next to it, I might have a capital letter H next to it. Or maybe I have another point, let's see, and I put a capital K next to it. Any letter works as long as it's a capital letter. Okay, so point H, point K. And the next vocab word is going to be a line. So a line is something that is made up of points and it has no thickness or width. Now, an easy representation of a line would be like the edge of your desk or the edge of a book or maybe a pencil, okay, something similar to that. And the key here is that lines go on forever, okay, and you have to have 2 points in order to create a line. Now, they may not always be drawn there, but just know that if you're ever wanting to create a line, you technically have to have 2 points. So here I have an example of what a line looks like. Notice that there are arrows on both ends. That shows that this line goes on forever, and so those are really important to include. And then usually what you're going to see is a line, and then you'll have some points that are on it, just like that, and then with their labels. So maybe I call this J and this L. So there's my 2 points, and of course you can have infinitely many points on here. So I only drew 2, but maybe there's one right here, and one right here, and one right here. Okay, you can have as many points on there as you want. You just, at minimum, have to have 2. And what's really important with lines is how we name them. Okay, so this is something you definitely want to write down. When we are naming lines, there's 2 ways we can do that. First is with 2 points that are given to us. So when we use points on the line, we're going to draw a little line symbol, so just little arrows back and forth like that. And then right below it, we're going to put 2 points that are on the line. So I'll put J and then L. Okay, and you can do it the other way. Okay, you can have L come first, so we have line, and then L, and then J. It's the same thing, just backwards. Okay, so that's one way of naming them. The other way is if they have a lowercase cursive letter. So maybe I have like a lowercase cursive K right here. Then what I can do is write the word line K. Okay, there we go. So that's 2 different ways to name lines, and it's going to be very important because you're going to have to do that quite a bit this year. So with the symbol above and 2 points, or with a lowercase cursive letter, and that's usually located towards the end of the line, kind of by the arrow. And you'll kind of see that as we go through and you look at the different pictures that I have posted on here. Okay. Next vocab word is a segment. So a segment is like a line, but it has 2 endpoints. So instead of having the 2 arrows at the end, this one's going to have 2 points at the end. So the main difference between a line and a segment is that segments do not go on forever. They stop at those endpoints. All right, so that's what it might look like. So maybe I call this A and B for my points. And if I wanted to name this segment, I could make the segment symbol. So segment and then AB. Or I could do it as segment BA. Either way, as long as you've got the 2 points there. All right. So segments, use your 2 points. And notice the difference in the symbols above. Here it represents a line, here it represents a segment. The last one that's similar to this one is what we call a ray. Rays are going to be really useful later when we talk about angles. A ray is just part of a line. So I've got an example right there. So notice that a ray kind of is like a mixture of a line and a segment. So we have one endpoint. So notice I have an endpoint here. So maybe I call this P. And then on the other side, we have an arrow, and what that means is it goes forever in this direction. So it only, in this particular example, it only goes to the right forever. When you go to the left, it stops at P. Now, just like the other two, you have to have 2 points on there. So typically what will happen is there'll be some point on this ray, maybe like right here. So we'll say D. And then we name it just the same. So we draw the little symbol. So we have a little dot and an arrow. Okay, it doesn't have to be very big. And then right below that, we always start with the endpoint. So if you think about it, the order that you write the letters should follow the order that the symbol goes. So notice the endpoint was P, so P has to come first. The arrow was closer to D, so we draw D second. So this is the only way that this could be named. You could not name it this way. Let me move this down. Oops. Not DP, because this tells you that the endpoint is D, but here the endpoint is not D, the endpoint is actually P. So you want to be really careful here that you go in the correct order. So lines and segments, the order doesn't matter, but rays, the order definitely matters. So that's really, really, really important. The next couple of vocab words are going to go pretty quick, and we'll be done with that, and we'll just jump into some examples. So just bear with me a little longer. Next big example is, or vocab word, is a plane. A plane is a flat surface. So think of a plane like a wall, or if you want to think of a plane as like a piece of paper. Okay, obviously these are just representations, because planes actually go on forever in every direction. So obviously walls don't go on forever, okay, they have to stop, but they are representing something that would continue on forever in every direction. So like this piece of paper here, the top would go up forever, the bottom down forever, and then left and right forever. Okay. Now the major difference between a plane and a line when we name them is that a plane, you have to have 3 points on them. So when we draw planes, typically it looks like something I've got right here, a 4-sided figure, and I could just throw 3 random points on here. So let's say here's a point, call it A, here's another point B, here's another point C. Notice they're inside this plane, so they're floating a little bit. And if I were going to name this plane, I would write the word plane, and then I would name the 3 points that are given to you. So plane A, B, C. Or I could reorganize those letters and I could say plane, let's see, C, B, A. Doesn't matter. As long as you've got the 3 points there, that's all they're looking for. Okay. Now, notice that in my directions, or my description of a plane, it says not on the same line. That's important. Okay, so if there is a line in your plane, for example, let's say I've got a line here right down the middle, okay, and I've got 3 points on this line. So let's 1, 2, 3, and we'll call them E, F, and G. Okay, I can't say that this is plane EFG, because all 3 of those points are on the same line. So you have to be really careful there that you're using 3 random points, not ones that are all on the same line. Now, if I wanted to, I could name this as AFC, okay, because these are not on the same line, or ECB, or GFB. There's so many different ways that you could name them, as long as they're not on the same line. I can't emphasize that enough. All right. 3 more vocab words, I promise, then we're done. So collinear and non-collinear, I'm pairing these together because they're just opposites of each other. So just if you can remember one, hopefully it's easy to remember the other. Collinear just means points on the same line. So for example, if I have a random line here, okay, and I put a bunch of points on it, let's see, D, E, F, and G, then I could say that D, E, F, and G are collinear because they're on the same line. Okay? Non-collinear is when they're not on the same line. So for example, maybe I have a point F, H, and S. Okay, these are non-collinear because they're not on the same line. So they're just opposites of each other. Okay, and then the last one of our vocab, and then we'll move on to some examples, is coplanar, and hopefully it seems similar to collinear. Okay, so coplanar just means points that are on the same plane. So for example, if I draw a plane in, okay, and you'll learn real quick my drawings aren't that great, but if I draw on a plane here, okay, maybe I call this A, and then G, and this is T, these would be coplanar points because they're all within the plane. All right, so pretty easy, just one extra way to identify things in points, lines, and planes. Okay, and the only other thing I forgot to mention, go back up to plane. When we name planes, we can also name them with capital cursive letters. So for example, let me give myself some space here. If you see like a capital cursive letter at the top of a corner, okay, you can also name it just by that. So I could say that this is plane and then R. Okay, so this is just one additional way of naming something, and if you're not going to use all the points. Okay, but sometimes they give that to you, sometimes they don't. It just depends on the picture, but we'll go through some examples where you might see that. Okay, so let's just jump into some examples of naming things, and then we should pretty much be done. So here I've got this great picture. Do your best to draw these in if you can. If it's hard, just practice. It's not a big deal. All we're going to do is look at this picture and name a couple things. Now, keep in mind that there are multiple ways to name things. So I might list a couple, but you may come up with another example that I don't list, and that's okay. If you're not confident in your answer, just come up to me at school, and I will gladly check that for you, make sure you're on the right track. All right? So part A here says that you need to look at the picture and name a line that contains the point R. So if we look at this picture and we want to find the point R and the line that's on it, well, here's the R, okay, and the line that has that on it is this line right here. So remember, to name a line, there was two ways. We could use 2 points, okay, so if I want to use 2 points here on this line, I could say line and then just pick 2 points. R is a point and Q is a point. Okay, so I could say line RQ, or I could name it as line, I could do SR. That would be fine as well. Okay, so there's multiple ways to name it with the points. Or remember, we can use that lowercase cursive letter. So if I want to use that lowercase L, I could write line L, and I'd be done. Okay, so those are just 3 examples. There are other ways, so remember that mine's not the only way. That's just something, a short way of catching our different ways of naming them. Okay, and then problem B says, name a plane containing the point Q. Okay, well, point Q is right here. And remember, to name a plane, we need 3 points. So I have to pick 3 points that are not on the same line. So I'd say plane, and I just pick 3 random points. So look at what's in this yellow plane and pick points. So V is a point. Okay, so I could name that. R is a point, so VR, and Q is a point. And the reason I can use these 3 is because they're not on the same line. Okay, I could also name this as plane P. Okay, because P is that capital letter I was talking about that would be in the corner. Notice there's no point around it. Okay, it's just it's a capital letter in the corner, and that represents this whole plane. Okay, so I can use 3 points, so 1, 2, 3, or I can put plane P, which comes from this box right here. Now, what I could not do, okay, I could not say plane RQS. Yes, they're 3 points, but notice they're all on the same line, and the rule says we can't have something in the same line, so it has to be 3 non-collinear points in order to name a plane. All right, so if you have any questions about those, make sure you write yourself a note to ask me in class. The last thing that we're going to do today for our notes is to just write down these 2 important facts, and then we'll be pretty much good to go. So the first thing it says, 2 lines intersect at 1 point. All right, what this just means is that if you have any 2 lines that cross, or think of it as like 2 pencils that cross, okay, where they cross is going to be 1 dot, 1 point. So here I've got 2 lines. I've got line AE that goes this direction, and I've got line DB going here. And where they intersect is at point C. So if I ever said, where's the intersection of the two lines, you would write point C, and you'd be done. All right, so that one's really easy. Most people don't have a lot of trouble with those. Where it gets a little harder is when you have planes that intersect. Okay, when you have two planes that intersect, so think about two pieces of paper that are crossing, okay, they create an edge, right? So, or if you think about two walls that meet in a corner, the whole edge, okay, is where they collide. So same concept. So this time where these planes are meeting is this whole line right here. So they always create a line when two planes intersect. So if I said, where do these planes intersect, you would say line and then name this red line. So this is ST. Or you could say TS, it doesn't matter. And I think that's it for this section. So make sure you've got all those vocab words written down, the pictures that go with them. If you have to go back and rewatch the video, by all means, please do that. It'll be very helpful. And if you have any questions, just be ready to ask me in class or email me, and then we'll get started on this assignment. Okay, so that's it. Thanks for listening.